Have you ever wondered if the information your doctor is sharing with you is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Has your doctor told you everything and given you every option available regarding your health care? Bring you the up-to-date and cutting-edge information so you're empowered to make your own health care decisions. A no-holds-barred discussion of what works and what doesn't work from allopathic, pharmaceutical, as well as alternative health care perspective. Don't be fooled, be informed. Now here's your host, Danny Walker and Dr. Richard Powell.
I hear we got a really great guest today.
We do. I'm super excited. We have Dr. Michael Grudedaria, who is a neurological chiropractor who specializes in autism and neurological disorders. Dr. Michael, I just want to welcome you to the Medical Insider. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
We are going to talk about how to avoid becoming a medical statistic and cover prevention of chronic illness. Dr. Michael, you've written the book, Beat Autism Now. Is it beatautismnow.com or?
Yes, beatautismnow.com. When we had discussed, doing the show, and we talked about the idea of chronic illness and becoming a medical statistic, thinking about how do we even start this conversation. It's such an enormous thing, It seems like as you hit your 40s, I guess, everybody either has something going on physically or, has a family member or knows somebody who has some kind of chronic illness. And it seems like it's everywhere, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
It's frightening to know how much we actually are affected by this.
Well, and I'd like to say just first, let's start off with a definition of exactly what is chronic illness.
Let me just start out by saying that if you were to have a heart attack or a stroke, there's nowhere on the planet that you would rather be because we have an amazing medical infrastructure. But our medical system has been set up for the treatment of acute problems. When you get sick, you go to the doctor. The doctor is there to help to relieve whatever the crisis happens to be. And then instead of them saying, well, let me teach you how to stay well, they say, when you get sick, again, come on back. So right. It's this idea of being able to handle an acute care situation, that's amazing here. But right now, if you look at diabetes or, heart disease, and those are the kinds of chronic illnesses we're talking about, arthritis, immune disorders, autoimmune illnesses, and so on. There's no immediate one-shot solution for, and yet we're still stuck in the same medical paradigm that our doctors and our medical system is set up to treat acute illnesses, but they're really ill-prepared to handle chronic disease. And that's why when you think about how prevalent this is in our society, you realize, wow, we are really in bad shape. We have so many different people taking so much medication, confined to their homes because of illness and arthritis and Alzheimer's disease and all these things. And there really is no solution. Today, what I really wanted to talk about was there is a solution, and the solution is to avoid getting it in the first place.
Absolutely. And Dr. Michael, I want to introduce you to my co-host, Dr. Richard Powell. Both of you have that same mindset of preventing disease before we get it. Hello to both of you.
Hi, how are you, Doc?
I'm good. When we talk about chronic illnesses, there's a place for all types of medical practices, allopathic medicine, as well as preventative care, alternative care, what have you. And the thing about it is that you're exactly right. We're talking about illnesses that typically are chronic because chronic is defined as anything over usually 3 to 6 months. And it can always be an immediate onset. It doesn't necessarily have to have been suffering from symptoms for years. It can be something as simple as, I woke up and I ended up having a stroke or a heart attack. But it's really important for us to define is that this doesn't just happen. It's not something that just one day I woke up and I had a heart attack because I had a clogged artery. It's because it's something to do with a long-term effect. It's a symptom or an outcome, I should say, of maybe not eating very well or eating improperly. It could be dietarily driven, but it's something that is over a duration of time. And when we talk about the preventative side of that is that, we may not be able to necessarily go back and change where we've gone or where we've been, but we certainly can move forward and change where we're going.
Exactly. And again, a big part of it comes in the idea that patients have to kind of find this out on their own. They have to figure out the idea of prevention because we really aren't trained with a prevention mindset. We're really trained with a treatment mindset, especially when it comes to pharmaceutical industry is extremely powerful, and they're really looking for the idea of treatment. And, that's how they generate their revenue. And we've become this drug kind of sensitive society. And what are the potential interactions of those drugs and what problems could they be causing in and of themselves? So there's so many different things that kind of go into this idea of preventing chronic illness. I think that really what it goes down to is when I was a kid, I remember just thinking about the idea of heredity and genes, that if your father had colon cancer, pretty much you were going to have colon cancer, or the odds were that you were going to have it because there was a genetic link. And I think over the last 5 years, we've learned so much about a new field in genetics called epigenetics, which is how the environment impacts the way our genes work. Not just whether or not, your genes are set to have predisposition, like how tall you're going to be or the color of your eyes and so on, but how those genes are actually going to give the cells the commands to handle their biochemistry on a day in and day out basis. So when you think about chronic illness, really like what's going on is we live in a very toxic environment and we eat very low nutrient quality or nutrient dense foods. And when you put those two things together, it causes the system to dysfunction. And like you said, this doesn't just happen. It takes years for chronic illness to develop into a point where somebody would have symptoms. But at the same time, where is that coming from? I think based on the literature, and there's so much to be connected to the idea of our bodies being very toxic and challenged with stress, on top of the fact that we have micronutrient deficiencies and so on. A chemical system like the human body can only fight that for so long without breaking down at some point.
Supplements can be as harmful as pharmaceutical medications if they're taken improperly, and that can also increase our toxic burden anywhere, pretty much across the board, anywhere in the world. We live in an environment that is just increasingly full of toxins. It's in our water supply, it's in our air, it's in our food, it's everywhere. And because of that, it increases that overall toxic burden that we feel that really promotes a lot of the pathogenic diseases as well as chronic diseases that a lot of us are dealing with on a regular basis. And so when we go to the nutraceutical side, a lot of things that most people don't understand is that nutraceuticals, for one, are kind of loosely regulated. Secondly, is that just like anything else, the media really kind of promotes take this, take this, take this, take this, because we've become a pill-popping society. And because we've become this pill-popping society, we're thinking, okay, well, I can't do the pharmaceutical because it's all chemical-based and there's so many side effects. But so then they get caught up in the nutraceutical side of it. And the thing about the nutraceutical side is that if it's something that you need, in other words, if you have a deficiency and it's something that you need, then you should jump right on that and you should be taking what your body needs. But you shouldn't be taking what your body doesn't need, because what that ends up doing is it ends up elevating that toxic burden, because your body, if it's unable to eliminate it, it has to store it. And once the body stores those elements, it ends up becoming a toxin, which just basically is a compilation to the toxins that you already have in your system. Would you like to elaborate on that, Dr. Mike?
Some of the things that you and I would do to avoid having that happen would be to test. We test our patients to see what it is that they actually need. Important is that each person is so biochemically individual that we need to really identify what it is that their body needs. So at this point, with the level of testing that we have available to us, we can actually find out exactly what vitamin, mineral levels and probiotic levels and all these different things that somebody would need and come up with a customized plan. Without going that far, obviously, you have to make some decisions as to what do you think the best thing would be. But, if you broke it down to just basic 4, I usually tell people, without really knowing specifics, a good multivitamin, multimineral combination a digestive aid like a digestive enzyme, probiotics, and fish oils, EPA, DHA. If you can cover those 4 bases, you're probably doing yourself a service without running the risk of getting toxic from too many supplements. Again, the availability at this point of testing makes things so specific that we can give people exactly what they need. Even with patients that I see with autism, I tell the parents, our goal is to take away what's hurting them and to give them what they're missing. And if we can make it that simple and come up with a strategy based on that, then I think we're all in much better shape.
Oh, absolutely. There are scientific companies out there, laboratories now. For instance, SpectraCell Laboratories out of Houston, Texas, which does a nutraceutical test. It basically is called an FIA. It's a functional intercellular analysis. It's a blood test. You go in, you get your blood drawn, and it gets sent out to the laboratory. Within 2.5 weeks, you get results back, and it tells you specifically what that patient's deficiencies are. It's covered by Medicare. It's covered by Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, a lot of these companies, insurance companies. So it's covered across the board. So really,
yeah, and it's such a simple thing to do because, I mean, if you think about it, why do people take vitamins and minerals and supplements anyway? We think about increased energy and vitality and all those things, but we have a giant chemistry set running constantly inside of us. And if we're missing some of the cofactors for those chemical reactions, which would be vitamins and minerals, amino acids and fatty acids and so on, then our chemistry becomes altered. And if once your chemistry is altered for a long enough period of time, disease develops. So it's not just about taking a supplement to have vim and vigor. It's a matter of finding out what it is we need so that we can kind of create a little bit of an insurance policy against chronic illness. And that's why I think that these tests are so important. And I think that you're going to see they will become more commonplace as time goes on.
I was just going to ask both of you that if you feel like this might be something that even Western medicine, allopathic medicine, will start recommending and doing more.
You're going to really find this happening, Danny, in what are called blended medical facilities, and they're becoming more and more across the board, across the nation. I know, I'm from the Seattle area, and we have actually blended hospitals now. And just to, FYI, like for instance, SpectraCell Laboratories out of Houston, they don't just work with naturopaths and chiropractors and alternative healthcare. Actually, SpectraCell Laboratories was based in all of their testing was done at the Houston University, and so it's it is across the nation, actually across the world, the globe. They probably have more allopathic physicians that are using the laboratory than they actually have alternative care providers.
Okay, and so for this next question for Dr. Michael, it's kind of fun. I'm interviewing both of you today. This is my thought as you say that, Dr. Richard. We have a doctor who then draws blood and they send it off to a lab, comes back, oh my goodness, I'm completely deficient in copper, iron, or something like that. Then I've been told that doctors aren't actually knowing more about nutrition. They're more for the pharmaceutical and treating it that way. So would it be better for me to go to a naturopath who's taught about more of the chemistry and the biology of the body?
My feeling is that absolutely. To me, before I became extremely motivated to learn this, the only people that really knew this to the core were naturopaths. They know more about medicine and understanding physiology than any doctors do. So that would be the top of the food chain as far as I'm concerned, unless you find somebody who specializes in it. But yeah, I mean, most medical physicians have no idea how nutrition fits into physiology. Again, the training is such that they're trained to look for disease. Diagnostic tests that look for illness, and when you find illness, that fits into a certain box, and then this is the treatment protocol that we use for that particular box. It's pretty straightforward. Now, there is a shift going on across the board with different types of physicians, and there's something called the Institute for Functional Medicine, which was started by medical doctors and PhDs, and I think that's how we're all going to kind of come together at some point, where the idea of using functional analysis, like using these kinds of like SpectraCell tests and so on, will bring us all together so that, that's our first line of defense, is to actually prevent illness. And should you get sick, then we have medication to treat it. There will be a shift. It's happening very slowly.
Well, and I just asked that question because my husband went to 3 different specialists, and we love every single one of them. They were wonderful, but never were we offered any kind of knowledge on maybe the possibility that some supplements, some antioxidants, some really great bioavailable nutrients could help Jack with his sarcoidosis. And then, like you said in the beginning of the show, we came to this on our own. To find those solutions through nutrition and nutraceuticals rather than pharmaceuticals on our own. And so I really look forward to the day where there are specialists and doctors who say, here's the other half that is missing here, that your body needs these nutrients and it's not getting them. So here's some solutions and some options for you.
Well, one of the things, Danny, too, is that it's all about educating and getting the information out there, because I think that the more the patients are aware of what is available. In some cases, I think they've been kind of put in the closet. A lot of this information's been hidden away from them, or it's been quote unquote tagged as maybe voodoo, or that doesn't work. Unfortunately, a lot of the older allopaths out there that just don't support preventative medicine. They don't believe in it. They don't even think that it exists, that you can prevent anything from happening. This is what it is. Big thing to remember is that, there's 2 sides. You've got urgent care, which is kind of that allopathic critical care, and then you've got the preventative care. And so there is room for both, and that's where that blended medicine comes in.
Again, we all sit here with our own stories of how we ended up more about preventing illness than becoming the statistic. And for Jack and I, it was because we did become a statistic that led us to be very passionate about now trying to help people from having to go through what we went through for 5 years fighting a autoimmune disease. And with all the toxins and all these things we've talked about and epigenetics, I want to get back to that, Dr. Michael, because I really believe that getting a better understanding and a better grasp as biology just is it's hard to keep up with science today. And so epigenetics, what are they finding with epigenetics and the ability, the power that our body has to heal on a DNA level?
If you look at a map of our metabolism and all the different reactions that are going on, it literally is mind-boggling. And there are, some major metabolic areas within that map that we find to be very instrumental in the creation of chronic illness. For instance, something called mitochondrial dysfunction. We know that mitochondria are the part of the cell that help us to turn food into energy. And mitochondrial disease is a genetic disease. If a child is born with a mitochondrial disease, generally they don't usually live past a year or just be a couple of years. So the idea of mitochondrial disorders has been very limited to geneticists and so on. And most people really have never even heard of mitochondrial issues because they were pretty rare. And what we've recently found, and within the last 5 to 10 years, is that you don't have to have genetically based mitochondrial disease. You could have mitochondrial dysfunction, where the chemistry of the mitochondria, the whole system is just not working efficiently to be able to turn food into fuel. And as a result, the parts of your body that are the most demanding for fuel, like your brain and your heart, will begin to dysfunction. So if you were to Google mitochondrial dysfunction or mitochondrial disorders and Alzheimer's disease, for instance, you'll find a tremendous number of hits because there's a direct connection. Mitochondrial dysfunction and autism. Most chronic illnesses, there is a connection between that and mitochondrial dysfunction. When we talk about how do the mitochondria dysfunction in the first place, and when we look at the chemistry of the mitochondria, we talk about something called the Krebs cycle, which I don't know about you, Doc, but when I was in school, that was the last thing I really wanted to learn. I really didn't see how it was ever going to fit into what I did.
Exactly.
Learning biochemistry. Now that's all I do. Because you realize how important it truly is. You look at this cycle and how it works and how intricate it really is and how easy it is for it to kind of get derailed by toxins. So if you could think about a chemical reaction, A plus B with the help of a C will give you D. Each of these kind of reactions happen on an ongoing basis, thousands and thousands and thousands per second. And if you have something like an elevated aluminum level, for instance, aluminum can actually have a higher affinity or a higher reactivity in that particular reaction than what is usually there, and it can derail the whole system. So toxins interfere with normal biochemistry by kind of jumping into the places that healthy nutrients or healthy cofactors would be, and that's how chemical and metal toxicity affects our chemistry. When we look at these things, there was a study that was done by Dr. Skinner where he took a pregnant rat and exposed it one time to a high level of the stuff that we throw on our lawn, like fertilizer and like herbicide, like a weed killer. He expected that the pups of this pregnant rat would be affected, but he wanted to see exactly how they were going to be affected. What he didn't expect was that it was going to go 4 generations deep. So what he realized was one toxic exposure can affect the great-great-grandchildren of the people that are exposed. So that's epigenetics. When you have something that changes the way the genes work, and then it becomes something called a heritable trait, meaning that you can now give that altered function to your offspring, that's epigenetics. And it's a scary thought, because if you realize just how much we're exposed to on a regular basis and how that's affecting our kids and how it's actually going to affect their grandchildren, it's frightening. That's why I feel like the whole autism epidemic is just the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. I just feel that this is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse as a result of how toxic we truly are, and how we are giving these altered chemical reactions to our kids. And then when they get together and have children, it's only going to be compounded. It's
Absolutely.
Pretty scary.
Yeah. It's something, Dr. Mike, that maybe we just kind of even break it down just a little bit further, too, because, we talk about the Krebs cycle and we talk about the cells, and that's really what it boils down to, is these billions and billions of cells that are in our bodies, and the alteration of those cells and how all of that takes place. When we ingest toxins into our system, it really isn't problematic until that toxic intake, it really becomes overbearing. In other words, we have too many toxins that our body can't really eliminate them like it should. And in today's society, with processed foods and herbicides and pesticides, we start talking about pharmaceutical medications and all of these different things, as well as, and this is on top of, what we're breathing in from the factories and the cars and all of the other things that are in our environment, as well as what we're getting off of our drinking water. If you're in the city, most likely you're taking in chlorines and taking in other chemicals that they're using to sanitize the water. Or if you're on a well, there's a good probability you're taking in some toxic metals. For instance, in the area that I live, we have very high elevations of arsenic. And you drink arsenic every day, as well as everything else. You're going to have this really huge elevated toxic burden. And what kind of happens is that you've got 5 different emunctories. We call emunctories, or detoxing organs of the body. The liver is the primary. It detoxifies over 80% of the body. We also have our kidneys, we have our lungs and skin. So we have other ways of detoxifying our bodies, but the liver is that primary. Well, what happens if what we're taking in is more than when we can eliminate? That's where that toxic burden comes in. And so now you've got these toxins. Well, if the body's not able to relieve them, they don't just disappear. They don't just go away. They get absorbed into the tissues of the body. So they get absorbed into joint tissue. They get absorbed into fat tissues. And when they're converted and absorbed, they're absorbed as a very acidic compound. So even if it was an alkaline derivative, it ends up becoming an acidic. And so now we get these elevations of acidity, and it starts to surround all of these billions of cells throughout our body. And really, that's kind of what starts to make this alteration or this change in the cell's development. And remember that, cells, they go through a mitosis. They go through this division on a regular basis. And so if we take a single cell and we basically, put that cell within this acidic environment, it ends up callousing over. So it's not able to absorb the nutrients that it needs. It's not able to absorb the glucose and the fats that it needs at that Krebs cycle to be able to produce the energy that it needs to be able to function properly. And so then as it begins this mitosis, it begins this separation, and we call that reproduction of the cell. We start getting that reproduction of the cell. Guess what? We end up with a genetically deformed cell, and that's when we have enough genetically deformed acidic cells. We end up, of course, now having, as you say, we end up with pathogenic and chronic illness and chronic disease, because what we typically rely on is healthy cells, not sick cells.
One of the things I as a woman want to point out is another huge toxic buildup in for women specifically, because science has found that we're 4 times more toxic than men, and a lot of it is linked to the personal care products, the lotion, shampoo, toothpaste, deodorants, makeup, cosmetics that we put on our skin every single day. And so, aside from the water and the air and the food and the environmental toxins, we literally slather ourselves every day in toxic stuff that, again, is marketed to us to keep us beautiful and from aging, and it actually causes lots of different diseases in aging. So, interesting stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And, it's a shame, because in my mind, I would think that before something could be sold to you, that it would have to be approved by somebody that it wasn't toxic. But, the cosmetic industry is absolutely unregulated. So you don't really know what's in it.
I want to go back to the comment that I kind of made earlier and just reinforce that, when we start talking about the FDA and we talk about what's regulated and what isn't regulated, even in the pharmaceutical realm, we've all taken Tylenol for years and years and years and years. And Tylenol's kind of been the leading drug of choice, pain ailment. If you get a headache, what do? You go take a Tylenol. Well, recent studies are now showing that chronic use of Tylenol is developing what? It's developing liver complications. And so now what you're seeing on the TV, I see it all the time, is if you've had liver disease or you've had these liver complications and you've been taking Tylenol, now these pharmaceutical companies are being sued.
My motto's kind of become education beats medication, and nothing against Western medicine again, but we've been talking, and no more gloom and doom. I think we all agree we're like totally maxed out with toxicity and a lot of environmental issues that our body is bombarded with every day. So what can we do to empower our bodies to be healthy, be healed, and prevent all these chronic diseases?
If we think about stress, toxins, malnutrition, and physical laziness as culprits, the 4 culprits for creating chronic illness, we want to absolutely deal with each of these things. So we need to get out and move. Our bodies need to move. It's self-generating a compilation of tissues. So movement is critical, and exercise is vital, and cardiovascular exercise is really key to try to get oxygen to all your tissues, to make sure that you're eating appropriately, and organic is best. They're now saying 15 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. It's a pretty high quantity, but that's really what we're talking about at this point. And then obviously to supplement what you're not able to get, to avoid toxins, to think about what it is you're putting in your mouth. I mean, if you look at things like excitotoxin, well, diet products, sodas and artificial sweeteners are excitotoxins. They actually drive our brain cells and our nervous system to death. And looking at stress in our lives and how emotional stress or physical stress has just a tremendous cost physically, and actually will break down your tissues through altering your chemistry. So, that's the first place to start, is to think about those 4 big topics. And then to take specific actions, detox is the best. To start out any kind of program by trying to eliminate toxins in your system. And when people talk about detox, or they think about detox, they think about juice fasting and just having water and so on. And in my opinion, that's really not the way to go. There are medical foods that you can get, different kinds of protein supplements, easy to digest, with juicing and so on and so forth, to try to actually get rid of all the stuff that's in your system while trying to reduce the overall inflammatory process that's going on in your system as well. Inflammation is really like at the root of most chronic illnesses. So, there's many, many different things to do, but I would say address those 4 things and detox probably twice a year for 5 or 6 or 7 days. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Doc?
And I think it's really important that people also understand that, exercise, one big thing here is that the lymphatic system, one of our, detox emunctories, one of the ways that we eliminate from the body. Lymphatic system is not like the heart. It doesn't have a pump. The only way that the lymphatic system moves is by movement. And so exercise is huge, to make sure that our bodies are detoxing properly. Water intake. A lot of people ask me, I have a lot of patients on a regular basis say, well, how much water should I drink? It's really, rule of thumb, real simple. Step on your scale, divide your weight in half, and that is how much water you should drink. So if you weigh 160 pounds, 80 is half of that. 80 ounces of water and that should be the minimum amount of water that you should be ingesting on a regular basis. Bottom line, get some tests done. I recommend to my patients get a nutritional panel done. Find out exactly what your nutritional deficiencies are, so you can take the nutrients that you need. Also, get a food allergy test done. Find out if there's anything in the environment that you're reactive to, because again, going back to what Dr. Mike just said, inflammation. Number one, reason for a lot of those pathogens. Remember that whenever you have acid, this acidic environment, you're going to have that inflammation because, acid's going to promote inflammation.
And I think, like you said before, this is something that we can really talk about for a long, long time. There's so many different aspects to this, but you have to take a first step. And I think the first step is always, deciding that you want to be healthier. Deciding that you want to take control of your health and not wait until something happens. It kind of makes me laugh to think that the first line of defense for breast cancer is self-exam. If a woman finds a lump, that means she's already got cancer. Hooking up with a practitioner that's going to be able to not only treat you and help you, but to educate you.
Simple little steps you can take. So be willing to do those little steps and not think that you have to be running marathons and eating organic raw food diet from the very first day.
I never ever want anybody to think, well, you're talking about prevention, but I already have something. People respond, and it's incredible. The more committed they are, the better they get.